We're now joined by Karen Sack, Executive Director of ORRAA, which stands for the Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance. Karen, welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and happy Ocean Day.
It's also Ocean Day.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
Let's talk about that because we haven't actually addressed the fact that it's Ocean Day here as well yet. So why is that so significant?
It's really significant because for about the last 25 years, the ocean has actually been left out of a lot of the climate discussions, and it was only a couple of years ago that recognition was given to this critical Earth system. It's the majority of our space on Earth, both in dimension across, but also in depth. It's the biggest carbon sink on our planet. Our oceans have absorbed 90% of the heat from carbon emissions. So if it hadn't, you and I would be sweating profusely during this conversation because it is keeping our planet cool, but it's now suffering the impacts. And so we have got to bring the ocean into the climate negotiations so that it can keep being this critical Earth system. It can provide food security for billions of people around the world and hold 80% of all life on Earth. So the nature and climate issues are absolutely critical when it comes to the ocean.
I'm sure there are many people at home sweating profusely over the biggest issues that we are discussing here at COP26. There's lots to do. ORRAA and the UK government just held a high-level meeting to mobilise finance for ocean resilience and tackling climate risk. Can you tell us more about the public and private financial commitments there?
Yes, this is really exciting to open Ocean Day here. We sat down with about 10 ministers from various countries, from the Maldives to Ecuador, from the Philippines to Indonesia, Canada, the UK, Germany, as well as the private sector, so banks like BNP Paribas, insurance leader AXA, Deutsche Bank, companies like Salesforce, Google, and NGOs like the World Wildlife Fund and the Nature Conservancy, because we all need to sit at the table to focus on the types of solutions and investments that go into the ocean space. The ocean is the least invested in sustainable development goal, and small island developing states, which we call big blue ocean states because their ocean real estate is often much larger than their land, are critically dependent on the ocean and are the least invested in geographies in the world. So what we are trying to do is see how together with the best brains in the business around the table, we can create the innovative financial solutions to drive that forward. And at breakfast this morning, we saw more than $20 million committed to invest in sustainable, innovative finance solutions.
What financial mechanisms can the private sector use in order to protect and restore coastal ecosystems?
Well, this is the beauty of what is starting to happen here. You can insure a coral reef.
Yeah.
And in ensuring a coral reef, you are protecting the communities that live behind that coral reef and keeping them socially and economically resilient. You can insure mangroves. You can begin, or we are hoping we can begin to develop the kind of resilient credit systems so that there can be investments into these coastal ecosystems. But it's as important for us to keep the communities that are living around these systems intact. We don't want to see the mass migration, the displacement, the food insecurity that'll happen if the ocean continues to be degraded. And so there are simple things like insurance for small-scale fishers, so that if they get ill and they can't go fishing, they don't then fish in an unsustainable way because they have health insurance. Or we can think about how we can create savings clubs for fishing communities and particularly empower women in these communities who are often the most vulnerable to change.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because for those watching, they may have heard of SIDSs or LDCs, so small island developing states and least developing countries, arguably the most impacted by the impacts of sea level rising and climate change. So what else is kind of ORRAA doing to address that?
Well, interestingly, we've just, working with the Stockholm Resilience Centre, released 3 studies which specifically focus on the impacts of ocean risk, so a changing ocean, heating ocean and acidifying ocean, on these small island states and least developed countries. These are the countries that, as I said, are absolutely dependent on healthy ecosystems for their resilience as well as food, culture, and their social lives. So we need to keep them intact. What the Stockholm Resilience Centre found is that the investments that are being made into the ocean are most often happening in northern countries, in the global north, rather than in these countries in the global south. And so what we need to try and do is see how this acceleration of investment into the ocean is equitable and sustainable, and it drives a sustainable development model. Of course, the most important thing for the ocean and for these communities is to get to net zero as quickly as possible, and to make sure that we do not increase temperature rise above that 1.5 degrees. That's the best thing for them, it's the best thing for the ocean, and the best thing for the planet.
And ORRAA is, of course, a partner in the race to resilience as well. So kind of what's the role of these global initiatives to reach that?
Well, we're really excited to be a partner in Race to Resilience. It is incredible to see the wave of support that is growing, the commitments that are being made as we all get behind this Race to Resilience, which is it's a partner initiative to the Race to Zero. So as well as getting to net zero, we've got to build the resilience of these communities so that they stay intact. Our contribution from ORRAA is we've committed to activate at least $500 million by 2030 into financial investments and products in these coastal areas, and to make sure that we are helping to build the resilience of at least 250 million people around the world living coastal areas.
Let's talk about that, that commitment and that investment, especially with a focus on nature-based solutions, which is a big part of driving that resilience and getting that resilience in place. I think it's 4 billion people by 2030. So how is that going to be, managed and put in place?
Well, we've got our work cut out for us, but the exciting thing that we found this morning were the commitments that were being made by companies and countries. So the Canadian government has just committed $9 million to invest in our work to help deliver and develop some of these products. The Swiss Re Foundation, along with the UK's Blue Planet Fund, will be investing in an Ocean Risk Innovation Challenge, working with locally led initiatives, working from the ground up to help build the financial products to invest in local communities. We saw the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation today invest $2 million in developing a technology tool for insurance underwriters so that they can stop insuring vessels that are engaging in illegal fishing. These are the practical things that need to be done so that we can drive that financing into these spaces to build the resilience to change.
What would you like to see coming out of COP26? As we say, Ocean Day is a big one here and perhaps less focused on in previous COPs. So how do you see that kind of changing at COP26 and beyond?
The important thing in terms of the language and the negotiations from an ocean standpoint is that the ocean becomes an embedded theme that goes across all of the issues at in the Climate Change Convention. It needs to be included, it needs to be accounted for. We need countries to be including the ocean in their NDCs so that we are beginning to recognize the critical role of the ocean. We need the private sector to stand up and start investing in a resilient ocean. There are potentially in the next 15 years, $8.4 trillion of investment at risk because of a changing ocean. We have got to change that. We've got to shift from a trajectory of decline to one of recovery, and working together, we can really do that. And I think the critical thing at this COP is we've got to see a significant surge of commitments in financing. We've got to meet that $100 billion goal, and we've got to get way beyond that into the trillions if we're going to make a difference.
On that, are you hopeful that we will be on the path to, in the next 15 years to make that happen? Because we hear a lot about these commitments, and obviously people watching may be just skeptical or be doubtful of all these big commitments being made.
I've been working in this space for about the last 25 years. So I would describe my view as worriedly optimistic.
Great.
We need the commitments, but we need the action. This is not about a road to Glasgow. It's about what we do when we leave Glasgow and making sure that we hold those people who have made those commitments accountable, that we are voting for the kind of change that we need to see, that we are investing so that we are investing in a future healthy and sustainable planet, and that we're all working together to get it done. Because, again, using an ocean analogy, it's all hands on deck right now. We've got to get to work.